It's such a privilege to introduce Mr. Shyam Srinivasan, who's our chief guest. He's also a distinguished alum of IIM Calcutta. I have this wonderful task of introducing him. Shyam is a proud alumnus of this campus and is also a recipient of the Distinguished Alumnus Awards from both IIM Calcutta and NIT Tiruchirappalli, from where he did his engineering. Shyam took charge as the Managing Director and CEO of Federal Bank on 23rd September 2010. In his first annual report message after joining Federal, Shyam had mentioned, "As I settle into my role, I'm confident that our cherished dream of making our bank as one that delivers quality and consistency in results, exceeds the customer expectations, rewards its stakeholders profusely, and makes its competitors feel that here is a bank worth reckoning, will be a reality not far from now." And thus began the story of brand transformation of Federal from a regional private bank to a brand of significant national presence over the past 12 years. And the story interleaved with the vision of Shyam, who stayed the course with grit, passion, and a compounding effect of 1% improvement each day. Under his watch, Federal Bank transformed from a franchise with an annual profit of 587 crores to a quarterly profit of 704 crores. Under his leadership, the bank grew 5 times and crossed 3.35 trillion in business. Today, Federal Bank is the first bank in the country, perhaps the only one too, which got an exclusive green equity investment from the International Finance Corporation, World Bank's investment arm, and for its steadfast commitment to ESG standards. The several accolades which came their way, such as the Great Place to Work Institute or Private Sector Bank of the Year, is a clear testimony that Shyam is truly an institution builder. Who would believe that he also writes to all employees unfailingly every Sunday morning through his Yammer blog for the last 5 years almost. His self-coined mantra of digital at the fore, human at the core, which has since become the driving philosophy behind all the digitalization efforts of the bank. He has been conferred the following awards and recognitions in recent past. Business Standard Banker of the Year 2020, India's top 50 best leaders in times of crises 2021 by the Great Place of Work Institute, and the Greatest Corporate Leaders of India Award given by the World HRD Congress. Congratulations, Shyam. We are all very proud of you, and thank you for coming as a chief guest today. Ma'am, can I go ahead? Okay, yeah. What's her name? The lady. Okay. With the permission of the compere, I have the little difficult job of speaking to all of you, and I know I have been given 10 minutes, but the earlier people have given me a little more extra time. So GM, Shrikant, Sanjay, and Anindya, with your permission, I may take a few minutes more. This is a talk which allows me to interact with my students also. And so I do sometimes pull rank and take the privilege of going over time. So Honorable Chief Guest Srinivasan ji, distinguished alums, awardees, guests, members of IIM Calcutta, faculty, staff, students, and all those who are joining this session online via the internet. My pranams to all of you. Srinivasan ji's mantra of digital at the fore and human to the core was the inspiration for my talk today. It's always difficult to decide what you should want to speak on. So I'm going to speak to you about a man who was known to be an excellent communicator and who continues to captivate the national and international psyche. And we regularly question, even today, the relevance of his philosophy and his humanity. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, or Gandhiji as the nation knows him, was my great-grandfather. I grew up in an atmosphere of annual summer visits to Sevagram Ashram near Wardha, and listening to my parents talking to people such as Vinoba Bhave, Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, the frontier Gandhi, Maniben Patel, daughter of Sardar Patel, Ramdas Gandhi, my grandfather, and many more. Now, as I grew up and experienced situations in my own life, I felt the urge to try and understand Gandhiji, the human being. I wanted to analyze him with an aim to understand for myself the relevance of Gandhian principles and Gandhian thought and his leadership style and the efficacy of his humanity and human values. So today I wish to analyze Gandhiji's leadership style and the relevance of these qualities and principles. So I will take the following approach. First, I must try to understand his roots, the roots that nourished him and gave him the values that make up his foundations. As you would have noticed, each one of our distinguished alumni awardees spoke about their roots, their foundation, their values, and what they picked up along the way. Having done that, I will try to analyze his leadership style, because all of you are going to be not just managers but leaders, and I think many of you are not just leaders, you're also statesmen in your own fields and areas and geographies. So this is an institute which is distinctly a crucible where statesmen are molded. So it's just in line that I try to analyze. It's a difficult task. So for this, let me take a quick step back in history and cull out what I consider is significant. Gandhiji's mother, Putliba, was the most significant influence in his life. She was a deeply pious woman who came from tradition that followed the Bhagavad Gita and the Vedas. They were Vaishnavas. She would take the hardest of the vows and keep them without flinching. He studied law and jurisprudence at the University College London, University of London, and at the age of 22 in 1891, he was called to the bar and he became a barrister. But what is less known is that in 1891, armed with this British law degree, he began practicing in Bombay, and his earnings were such a pittance that he could barely support himself and his family. And he failed miserably in his practice. This is less known or less talked about. He was also a very unsure and a shy communicator. His communication skills did not make any mark at all. It was the hard reality of the need to earn a living that prompted him to accept an offer to go to South Africa. In South Africa, what is generally well known is that he experienced racial discrimination and other injustices, which is well documented, well known. For example, being brutally, physically assaulted, being thrown out of a train at Pietermaritzburg, and many more such personal experiences. I'm not going to mention them. These were the triggers that aroused the activist leader in him, and he was traumatized. He wanted to fight back. For the first time, he began to think of his social duty. This is going to touch each one of us. In each one of our lives, you will have situations when you will feel traumatized, you would want to fight back, and you will start thinking at that time about your social duties. I'm sure each one of these distinguished awardees went through that. So what happens when this happens? So he needed to reach out to others like him who were suffering. He needed their active support. He would have to learn to communicate with them. So less known fact about him is he's Gujarati, but in those days in South Africa, most of the indentured labor were Tamilians. He learned and taught himself how to speak Tamil. And he would have to win their trust. Very, very important for leaders, managers, statesmen. So it would be correct to say that the foundation of Gandhiji's life philosophy was the ancient Sanatan Dharma. And Gandhiji was deeply influenced by the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. He says that himself, and the Vedas and the Upanishads. So what does Sanatan mean? Sanatan means beyond the time dimension, timeless, one that has no beginning and no end. And dharma, most people will tell you that dharma would be defined as religion. But I personally, over the years, have rejected this definition of dharma as religion. I'm more inclined to define it akin to our obligations, and which are both personal and social in nature. So Sanatan Dharma is the dharma which talks about the obligations of a human being personally and socially. The sum total of what can be included as human values. The word Hindu is, of course, as you all know, it's a non-native origin and does not appear in any of our spiritual scriptures. This is just factual stuff I'm sharing. So now I graduate to the leadership style. As I explore Gandhiji's leadership style, and all of you here, many of you who are students of management may also wish to enumerate the qualities for leadership in the 21st century. So keep it at the back of your head, and you can check on it as I go along. These are my thoughts. So I wish to pick up what I believe to be the essential qualities that went into his leadership style. It will be my attempt to also try and analyze if these qualities are relevant or irrelevant today. This way you can yourself come up with the answer to the often asked question, is Gandhi relevant today? So let me walk you through the key qualities. So the first one, his foundation was in Sanatan Dharma, a law that takes into account the need for dignity and respect for all of creation. So the first question I posed to myself was, if in this century there is a need for us, our leaders, our statesmen, to uphold the dignity and respect of all creation. Therefore, the question is this quality relevant or irrelevant? The next one, Gandhiji built on his innate nature, which was grounded in compassion towards all forms of life. Is the ability to be compassionate relevant or irrelevant? Is this a trait? So I leave that to you. When he was faced with brutal discrimination, he surely would have wondered if he should stay back and fight or go back home. Now, going back home would be cowardice. So he surely needed to overcome fear to be an effective leader. Is there a need to overcome fear? So therefore, the question is, overcoming fear, is this relevant or irrelevant? To fight for a cause, he needed to collaborate with others. He needed their active support. In the 21st century, is the need to collaborate relevant or irrelevant? Now, I'm putting collaboration as against competition. So we know how to compete, but do we really know how to collaborate? And is it relevant? Okay. The next one is, to win their trust, he had to effectively communicate. To effectively communicate, his intentions to help had to be selfless. Alok, just let the dog be. Just let it be. It's doing nothing to anybody. Just let it be. Okay? So the thing is, to win the trust, he had to learn how to effectively communicate. To effectively communicate, his intentions to help had to be selfless. Are effective communication and the need to be selfless relevant or irrelevant traits in leaders today? He needed to gain contemporary knowledge of the problems faced by the very people he wanted to help. So he worked very hard to gain domain knowledge through reading voraciously. So to be effective, do leaders need to have domain knowledge? Ask yourself if this trait is relevant or irrelevant. And I think both Shrikant, Sanjay, as also Anindya touched on that in their own way. He also held wide-ranging discussions with stakeholders as also with thought leaders. For example, he wrote to Leo Tolstoy and John Ruskin directly. These teachers gave him a reasoned basis for his philosophy, which helped cement his convictions. Therefore, is the need to discuss with stakeholders and thought leaders relevant or irrelevant? He experienced the problems firsthand himself by submitting himself to the same situation. So again, is experiencing a problem firsthand yourself by immersing yourself in a problem a relevant or an irrelevant trait for leaders or successful leaders? He sought the root causes of what prompted exploitation of one human being by another. Is seeking root causes therefore a relevant or an irrelevant trait? Now, he realized that for the economically poor citizens, always labor with their own hands for earning their living was the only option. For an economically underprivileged person, working with your own hands was the only option. They didn't have a choice. They had no choice but to be self-reliant. The word for self-reliance in Hindi is swavalamban, as a means to, so he is the one who propounded that be self-reliant is a means to reduce oppression and exploitation. Now this is easy to understand if you just extend this logic. So the thing is, as our self-reliance increases, the oppressive use of others to fulfill our needs reduces in direct proportion. This became one of the central pillars of his social and economic philosophy. Therefore, is the need for self-reliance, even at the national level. Today we talk about, and Dr. Jaishankar earlier this month spoke about Atmanirbhar Bharat. Is it relevant or irrelevant? We can decide that. Each one of you decide it in your own heart. Gandhiji contended that the basis of human society was not wealth, rather the wealth of human society is human compassion. So then, is there a need for a leader to be compassionate? Is it relevant, irrelevant? He contended that the root cause for social injustice and inequality was inequitable possession of wealth and power, which are selfish in nature. So is this contention of his relevant or irrelevant? So in South Africa, he experimented with this evolving philosophy and beliefs and put them into practice in his own life. He was a hands-on man. Therefore, is being hands-on relevant or irrelevant? He practiced what he preached. You would notice if you read about him or try to find out, he was not just the initiator, but very often he was the lead doer. So as a leader, to initiate something, if you see as Shyam's bio says, he's not just the lead initiator, he's the lead doer. He's still communicating every Sunday. That takes effort. It reads very effortlessly, but for him to go through the Yammer blog and write something to so he's the lead initiator and the lead doer. The story goes same with Shrikant, with Anindya, with Sanjay. So there are 4 of our own colleagues who show this, and Gandhiji also did the same. Now, the next point is selfless actions require discipline and moral courage. Sanjay spoke about discipline. Anindya spoke about discipline and also moral courage. Now, such actions, those who are instilled with discipline and moral courage, such actions always generate tremendous energy, confidence, and fearlessness in the doer. A leader must be fearless of a superior power, of an imminent danger, or of undesirable outcomes. Leaders need to be fearless to these outcomes. You may end up with an undesirable outcome, but if you start cutting your cloth to the undesirable outcome, you'll never be able to move. So think about these. There are no prescriptions here, I'm just sharing. Ask yourselves if being fearless to be an effective leader, is it relevant? To practice what he preached and to live with simplicity required Gandhiji to continuously experiment and review his philosophy and actions. Is the ability to review our own selves relevant or irrelevant if you have to be a leader? Now, in seeking a true understanding of issues, which all those leaders who have been there, and I have the courage to say so because I have experienced it myself, I find that in seeking a true understanding of issues, one has to be able to apply one's mind without the prejudices of our own beliefs, And Gandhiji was good at this. That means he was able to apply his mind without the prejudices of his own beliefs. This state of mind, in my belief, is a very uncommon state. And therefore, again, is this ability essential in understanding the true nature of issues? Is it relevant or irrelevant? So it was not just about comprehending the truth, but also practicing the truth. This is what prompted his belief that truth should always be sought, no matter how unpopular. Again, should you always seek the truth if you're a leader and put in such a situation? Is it relevant or irrelevant? So this is why in 1906 he coined the word satyagraha. Most of you know satyagraha, but if you talk about satyagraha in India's context, many of you will think it is just sitting on a strike, on a dharna on the crossroads. Well, actually satyagraha is joining of 2 words, satya and agra, which is in English insistence of the truth. Now my own take on what Gandhiji meant with satyagraha was, yes, insist about the truth, no doubt, but it cannot be by any means. You can't put a gun on somebody's head and say, I'm insisting on the truth. So I spin it by putting a filter there by saying, we should seek the truth, but assume that God is your witness, whoever that God is, Then you're probably seeking the truth in the means by which it should be sought. And by 1925, he had successfully conceptualized a fearless philosophy driven by selflessness. He articulated it beautifully as the 7 social sins, which are at the core of social inequity, injustice, and oppression. I'm not going to read them, but they go something like wealth without work, pleasure without conscience, knowledge without character, etc. His own life and approach were exceedingly simple and transparent. So to the younger generation here and those who don't know, there were no secrets, no secret strategies, no secret meetings, no secret communications, no secret agendas. His agenda was known to all, even to his adversaries. So our simplicity of needs and transparency in actions, are they relevant traits for being an effective leader? So by living a transparent life, he was open to public scrutiny. Now, he used transparencies as a means to keep himself to the narrow, selfless path that every seeker of truth must walk. He tried not to be attached to anything, not to thoughts, not to decisions, not to ideas, not even to his own views. Given the knowledge of data and circumstances, he was open to review his opinion and his stance. Now, is that ability a relevant or an irrelevant ability need for a leader? He never used threats to convey his ideas, nor did he use the weaknesses or negative aspects of his opponents to promote his argument and philosophy. Now, this is revolutionary in today's world. You may want to, I'm just putting it out there, think about it. How many of us have the courage not to use the other person's weaknesses or negative aspects? By continuously practicing what he preached, he was able to achieve significant harmony between his thoughts, words, and deeds. This instilled in him extraordinary courage of convictions. His constituency, the people, always sensed this selflessness and fearlessness. And that's probably why they trusted him and had faith in him. So, is Gandhiji's style, approach, leadership style, qualities, are they relevant, irrelevant? I leave it for you to decide. Leaders must be able to communicate effectively, but you'll find very often leaders are unable. Not every leader is able to communicate ineffectively. And my own experience is that inability to communicate clearly is very often driven by situations where the communicator is compelled to communicate views contrary to their own beliefs. That is at the core of lack of communication. There is nobody who cannot communicate effectively. Each one of us has the divine gift to be able to communicate. But when this discrepancy happens between our core beliefs and what we're being asked to say, that's when the communication starts opening up at the seams. Now, finally, as I wrap up, Gandhiji always went to the source for information. Example, he wrote to John Ruskin and Leo Tolstoy. Similarly, to all of you here, students, please do not rely on interpretations of Gandhiji by other people, not even by me. Please go to the source of the information. In any problems that you're doing, try as often as possible, go to the source. For Gandhiji, the source, of course, he is dead and gone, we can't talk to him, but the source for me was the collected works of Gandhi. Analyze him yourself. Don't take what I say, analyze him yourself. I also regularly hear the phrase Gandhian principles, Gandhian thought, Gandhian ideals. But in reality, Gandhiji's thoughts and ideals are borrowed entirely from the Vedas, Upanishads, and the Bhagavad Gita. He himself asserted that he has nothing new to say. Whatever he has to say are as old as the trees in the mountains. So in my humble opinion, it's incorrect of us to attempt to redefine the principles of Sanatana Dharma as Gandhian principles. Again, this is my view. I put it up for all of you to decide yourself. In my personal belief, Gandhiji amply demonstrated the efficacy of human values in managing complex situations to achieve sustained results. He was considered a political man, but my view, after studying him as a human being, he was a serious spiritual aspirant who was thrust into a socio-political role. He was human, he made mistakes. I thought, should I use the word glaring mistakes? Of course, I have the benefit of 75 years of hindsight, so I will just leave it at mistakes. But in the net, he delivered amply on the tasks entrusted to him. I know you will have many questions. I hope I have left you with tools for your own inquiry. And in closing, I would also like to say that the need for incorporating human values in management is being felt by humanity today more than ever before. And IIM Calcutta, I believe, is truly poised to can become a global leader in filling this gap. Before I end, I do want to say that to all my alumni friends, and you all will agree, all of them actually have already agreed, that IIMC and the education they received here and the experiences they garnered here have had significantly been instrumental in their career development. Now, one of the surest signs of a sense of human values is when people start showing that they have an ability and desire to give back. Each one of the distinguished alums said, we want to give back. So I'm going to take on that. It's just my job and my privilege as chair of the board to tell each one of you who is listening here and across through the internet that please give back to IIM Calcutta. While IIM Calcutta is able to generate revenues to meet our costs, all you finance guys will understand that, but I'm going to put a spin to that. We need all your help so that all your help, whatever you can consider, to provide us so that we can meet our aspirations. I think meeting our costs is just the bare minimum. But talk to us, talk to colleagues, talk to alums. I'm sure you also have aspirations for IIM Calcutta, and reach back to us, get back to us, and help us so that we go beyond meeting our costs to meeting our aspirations. Thank you very much for your patience. Jai Hind.